Hi guys, thank you. Today is a historic day, and not only because it is Father's Day and International Yoga Day and a solar eclipse, among other things. The historic part of connecting conversations is that for the first time we have a voice on the show that is not mine and Sujata's, and we are very glad to have with us Saral Somaya. She is an educator. Welcome to the show, Saral.
Thank, thank you.
And Sujata and I have been introducing ourselves in every podcast. But one quick mention is I have an advertising background. I've been a writer for the last 25 years. Sujata is in the recruitment business for around 2 decades now. And she's also training to be a counselor. So today's agenda of getting this podcast together with a guest is the idea that all of us are the lucky parents of teenagers and an age above teenagers for in Saral's case. One of the bigger issues that we tend to face is the instilling of values. And when I was thinking about this topic today, I was reminded of a favorite quote of mine. The only two things that we can bequeath our children is roots and wings. So I was thinking, okay, how do we define roots? So since Sharil is not only a parent and as a son who is older to both our kids, we would want to start with her being an educator. How do you look at this phenomena of roots? What would you want to say about that?
Um, I'm obviously going to speak from my experience as a parent. Um, I did not really think in terms of this quote, so to say, but I love it. It actually defines what parenting it is. It is, giving them a strong foundation, strong root system, and giving them the wings to fly. That is the responsibility of a parent, undoubtedly. So how I see it is, if I go back in time, I was very comfortable in who I was and who I am. And that has passed on to my son. We live in a country which is not my birth country, but I'm just as comfortable here as I was in my birth country. And that has passed on to my son as well. He identifies himself just as equally with both the cultures. He's not a misfit in any of those cultures. I think that's what grounding and rooting is all about. That you are comfortable in your skin, no matter where you are, no matter who you are. And that is a confidence that we need to help develop in our children. Giving them wings is whether I was to continue living in India or now that I'm overseas. Um, it's about risk taking, and you have to understand that there is no gain without a little bit of risk every now and then. And the unknown is the risk, but the unknown is where the growth is. Um,
Yeah.
so have that faith that, just because it is unknown, it's going to be bad or it's going to be wrong is not a good mindset to have. That's in my opinion. And because that was, the perspective of, life that we had in general, helped us take those little risks. And those were the wings we gave to my son. A little small example that I can give you here is, typically when your children are choosing subjects for, in high school, year 12, to go into university, they would choose very typical subjects like high scoring subjects like chemistry and a high level of mathematics and physics and things like that. But we decided that we are not going to have any say in the subjects for my son to choose. It is out of his sheer interest, whatever he wants to do, whatever he wants to explore. Um, Coming from the kind of background, we have been raised, it's not very common, because I see people, oh, no, you must take this, you must go to this university. We did not have anything like that. So we just gave him the freedom to take the risk and to make that choice. Sorry for taking so long to explain.
No, no, not at all. So you made actually quite a few points that make it worthy of the discussion. So Sujata, if we were to start with the first point she made, um, the sense of being at home in two different countries. Well, you could say the same thing. I think a lot of people who've lived in India and have moved abroad. For the record, a few of our listeners would not know Saral stays in Australia. So this is a truly international conversation we are having. And Sujata, of course, is in London. So getting to the main point, if a person belongs to two different countries and still manages to hold their own, uh, obviously it is not country led because the manifestations would be country led. One is in your case and Saral's case, some part of you would be Indian, your culture, the way you dress, the way you talk, the way you eat, um, things like those. But some parts would be imbibed by the geographies that you guys have moved to. Some good, some bad. Obviously, we are not getting into the color of what those manifestations are. So, what is that point that makes you hold yourself beyond these borders, if I were to call it?
No, thanks for sharing what you did, Saril. That was something I can so kind of relate to. I mean, my daughter will be 13 in September. It's a classic age. And, I've been here for the better part of 14 years. One of the things that used to always, I would say, bother me, but would always be in my mind was how do I probably give the best of whatever the best is for me. And you had me at the point where you said we let our son choose the subjects that what he wanted to and what he was happy about, rather than looking at the usual physics, chemistry, maths, scoring subjects. And that's exactly what we went with Ria as well. I mean, uh, in the UK, I'm not sure how the system works out where you stay, but out here, there is a lot of emphasis to get into grammar schools. Uh, Most Indian parents, if I may say that with due respect, the parameter of a child's intelligence is based on how many grammar schools he or she has managed to crack into. So that journey typically starts for a child maybe when he or she turns around the age of 9. You have weekend classes and things like that. You go through this entire rigmarole. You put your social life on hold. You as parents have no life. I guess somewhere at the back of the mind, there are very few parents that I have come across who even consider the child's ability and what the child really wants to do. I mean, needless to say, at some level, I think we ended up sticking out because um, we didn't really push Ria into any of those things. She just went with the flow. She's happy doing what she is. And I think somewhere for me, and I think both my husband, that kind of was very important that she pursues what she wants to and not what we feel, culturally or otherwise, that one needs to pursue in terms of excelling. I don't know if I'm making sense or I've answered your question, Bunty. Um,
Yeah, you do. I want to go in depth.
sure, of course.
If the See, partially, I think that is exactly what Saral said. Those are still, to me, a bit of the manifestation part of talk in terms of saying no to society and trying to be independent in your thought process. My question is more about where does the independence arise from? What sense of um, comfort with one's own being can bring that kind of independence? Uh,
I would probably say it is. I mean, just to borrow again from Saral, I think it would also be the fact that being comfortable in who you are and where you come from, and not really being defined by which school you go to and what lifestyle choices you make, etc. Just being absolutely comfortable, irrespective of which part of the world you are in. and that spirit to continue to maintain it as much as possible, and maintain it, I would say, effortlessly, because the more I feel sometimes if you try really hard at something, you'll probably lose it away. But the fact that you're trying to maintain something and it comes naturally, I think the flow becomes very effortless, whatever that is, which you want to instill in yourself or pass it on to your children. uh, yeah.
So, Carol, if I were to pick up this point and ask you, when she says naturally, well, it's a very deceptive word. There is nothing natural. We are either imbibing from others. We are social beings, uh, and we have our own basic inherent nature. Some of us might be very confident. Some of us might be mischievous. Some of us might be corrupt. Some of us might be introverted. Uh, so, if one were to go a bit into what is that natural part that one has, and if one has to maintain, so by maintaining it, I think she means sustain what is holding you. So that is the second part. What is being held is the question here. What is natural here? What makes since you put it on yourself rather than your son, that you were comfortable, so he inherited it from you. So the question comes back to you: what is it that made you sure that you would sustain yourself irrespective of the pressure of being in a new country?
There are a few different layers. It's not a straightforward answer.
Okay.
And these questions come my way quite often now, because people ask, oh, we ask from friends, right? How did you do this and how did you do that? Um, One thing, I can't say, oh, this is the first and foremost and whatever, but a few things that come to my mind is my husband and I share a very supportive relationship. And I think that's a very strong foundation that we've been able to give Utkarsh. Um, Also, I always look at my motherhood. Like, I strongly believe being a parent is a privilege. People take it for granted. They think just because as a species we can procreate, we can just go have kids and that's the end of the story. I don't see it like that. I think it's a huge privilege. It comes with certain rights, but with more responsibilities, and responsibilities not that worry me, but responsibilities which have made me a better person. I always say to Utkarsh that, Utkarsh, I was never a bad person, but I think I'm a better person after you came into my life. After I became a mother, I became a better person, because anything that I would say to him, I had to make sure, not make sure really, but I used to automatically reflect. Do I do this? For example, if I tell him, "Jhoot nahi bolna, don't lie," that applies to me, right? It applies to me too. And that's why today, when, as an educator, I'm talking to someone, I tell them, please don't ask your children to do something that you don't do. Yeah, they don't listen to what you say, they listen to what you do. So you don't even have to say anything, you just do it and they will follow you. And I think that's where, I did not make an effort to be comfortable. I was comfortable. I was happy with, I mean, we had a lot of teething troubles in this country. I mean, it's not that it was, an easy ride, but I don't think we ever sit and dwell on those kind of challenges that come our way. We just, chalti ka naam gaadi. We keep going. So I think Utkarsh has also, I'm hoping, learned that, what, challenges are always going to be there. Life is not always going to take the turn that we hope or we wish or we plan for. Whatever comes, just make the most of it. So I think practicing what you preach, don't say things to your children if you are not going to do it yourself, is something that I really, really think good parenting is all about.
Yeah, I have a very, to play the devil's advocate here. Um, there are times when I've heard a lot of my friends talk about it. to some extent, it is also true that we have crossed a large part of our lives being what we are, and it may not be the ideal parenting model by itself, what we stand for. See, there are people uh, who smoke, who drink, who swear, who get angry, uh, who have anything at all which they would not want their kids to imbibe because they know the repercussions, but they are unable to do anything about it. So on paper, it's a very lovely thing to say that stand up for
I
what
don't agree.
you.
I
No,
don't
no, but
agree.
I'm not even coming to that. I'm saying, say, I have enough. We have enough examples in the world of people like those. So since we are digging a little deeper on what works for us who are trying to be this, it's not about agreement and disagreement about the point itself. It is, if it is working, what makes it work? If it doesn't work, what leads to its failure? So what is it that makes us, okay, for want of a better term, I will just use a provocative term, holier than thou suddenly when we become parents? What has changed? Uh, what has changed for us? Sujata, would you want to say something? You look like you have a
Yeah,
tongue.
I think what probably changes when you become a parent is because the fact that you are so responsible uh, to raise another child, to to try and do the right thing or the correct thing, because that's a, I mean, even though there isn't a manual as how to be a good parent or whatever. I think we learn on the go is what I would say. And that innate, I would say, probably fear as well, that you don't want to get it wrong. Not that you will get it wrong, I would like to believe that. But I think it's like this morning I was thinking, right? It's Father's Day today. um, and there's this very profound one liner from the movie Main Hoon Na. I don't know if you guys have watched it. Um, there's this line where one of the characters who plays a mother in the role, I think it's Kiran Kher, who says, "Fathers are very important." It's like, because the one of the other characters doesn't know that he has a father or whatever, without getting into details, but that one line has stuck with me. And on such days I tend to revisit it. It's like, the what you kind of want to do for your kids, the responsibility, pretty much everything. And like Saral said, you don't tell your children how to live. They watch you, and they pick up what they want to pick up from you, and whatever that is, good and bad both. So I think it's that innate fear of being responsible and doing it right when your child goes out in the larger world, because that pretty much sums up everything that you want for your child, or what they have picked up from both of you, both the parents, I would say.
Okay. So
Definitely.
one quick question to Saral, say, for example, I have a I have an example. Suppose there is this uh, parent who has a habit. It could be any habit, and say has a son who's of impressionable age. I think he's very close to the age that your son is in, or maybe 2 years here and there. Uh, so he picks up the same habit. I am not sure whether he has. This is just a hypothesis. And as a parent, if either of us were to fall in that problem, where you have a problem with yourself, when you have a habit and you've been trying to resolve it for many years, and suddenly the person that you feel most responsible for, I think it is, um my thought has been that I am most vulnerable as a parent more than anything else. Everything else can be taken care of, but as a parent, you try and think how to resolve it um, Um, so this is the point that we are trying to figure out. How do we get into a point where we do not pass this sense of roots?
Uh,
Is it
Sorry.
making sense? Shall I come back again? Okay, I'll rephrase the question.
Is the question that if the child has,
The
you
same
know,
habit that you do not want,
hmm,
if the child has the same habit that you do not want, and you've been trying to resolve it for yourself, how do you ensure that these kind of roots do not pass on to that person? Uh, is the only way by changing yourself, or is there any wordy wisdom, if I were to call it, that would resolve it? Would it?
um, there's no wordy wisdom that will resolve it. I mean, again, I'm just sharing my
Yeah, yeah.
experience. Yeah. It also, see, my relationship with my son, sometimes I describe that we are like siblings. I was quite young as compared to the age that people have children these days. I was quite young when I had him. So I kind of grew up with him, so to say. And so we have a lot of like sibling, jaise quarreling hota hai. We do that. Um, I have this habit, Bandi, you must have noticed. I have this habit of saying sala in every sentence almost that I speak. Sala, yes. Avo. That's how far I swear. There came a time I thought, oh my God, like, I say it so often, agar Utkarsh ne bhi wo pick kar liya to, and if he starts saying sala, sala to, and I'm like, oh, please, no. To my good luck, he did not pick it, right? I became a little conscious when I used to talk in front of him when he was little. He did not pick it up, but guess what he has picked up? He's picked up the word pagal. So our pagal, he, like Utkarsh Naishad and I will sit, and if I do something, he'll say pagal. So now, if somebody from India or a very conservative background was to listen to this conversation, they'll say, oh my God, apni maa ko pagal bol raha hai. But he's not saying pagal in that way, right? So then I tell him, Utkarsh, private mein theek hai, public mein nahi, huh, please. Aisa. So I'll talk to him like that. So if, however, I have been doing something, I have a habit which my child also picks up. I think it depends on how reflective you are as a person. If you are not reflective, then you have no right to expect anything different from that child. Okay, nothing is going to happen. However, if you are a reflective person, or in the journey, in your evolution, you have come across situations which have turned you into a more reflective person, then if it was me, I would sit my son down and I would say, Utkarsh, I want to confess something. And then, because I have conversations like that with Utkarsh, I'll sit him down and I'll admit my mistake, and that's it. You admit, and then both of you start a journey where you're both trying to, rehabilitate each other.
Wonderful point. I have maybe not a question, but an observation. So maybe Sujata, you can pick it up. So are we really saying that to start with, you have to start treating your kid like an equal rather than your own offspring, and treat him or her with the same respect that you would in any other condition? And if yes, there is a small tweak there. There are times where you cannot admit everything in the sense of it's not as easy as a confession as you are making it out to be. There are some times when the kid does not have the bandwidth at their particular age to understand it. So
Yeah.
there are two questions. So the first question is do you agree that it is about giving them respect as a human being rather than a person of a certain age? And second, if yes, what if the human being is incapable due to age? Nothing else. And the comprehension levels. Like in third standard, you cannot expect a kid to understand history lessons or science lessons of the eighth or the ninth standard. Or to provoke again, bodily changes that a person faces when they turn 13, 14, 15. So they would not understand because it does not pertain to them. So how would you answer or reflect on these two points.
I think Saral has been wanting to say something. I will hold on to my answer. You please go first, Saral.
Um, no, he is not an equal. He is my son. I am the mother. Giving
Okay.
respect doesn't mean he has to be an equal to me. That's how I see it. I'm the mother. I am the more responsible and I have more rights over him, right? But now that he's almost 24, at that time we are two adults talking. But even then there are times where I am the mother. I have the last say, not literally, but if you know what I mean. So I personally don't think that I treated him as an equal when he was little. In fact, I fundamentally disagree with that concept where people say, I want to be his friend. No, you have to be the parent. You have to be the mother. You have to be the father. But respect, yes. Respect, yes. You give them the respect that they, can handle and understand. Talking about, that, oh, I can't talk to a year 3 child with this. And I'll give you a small example very quickly. So in India, I'm not sure how programs and movies are now rated, but here there is a G rating, which is general. You can watch aram se, anybody. Then there is a PG rating, which is parental guidance. So you should have an adult with you to watch. And then there's M, which is mature themes. And then there's R, which is like real serious mature themes and violence and all sorts of things. So I remember when Utkarsh was quite little, maybe year 3, 4 types. I can't remember exactly. But I sat down with him and I said, do you know why this is called G and why this is called PG and why this is M? So to explain M, my explanation to him was, okay, Utkarsh, M is not because it is too much violence or too much sexual references. It's not because of that, Beta. It is because there are certain concepts that your mind has still not developed to be able to understand. That's why it is advisable that you don't watch such movies, because you might misinterpret those things. So that was my explanation to him, that yeah, your mind is still not developed for those kind of things. But at the same time, I know people who, at least in this time and age, they are exposed to a little bit too much. For that, I feel grateful that I became a mother when social media did not exist. So there was no temptation for me. When there was no temptation, I didn't have to resist anything. But I sometimes feel that if I was to have a child today, I would probably go into a remote area and not have any social media or any WhatsApp or any Zoom around me. And that would be my magic of a good parenting, because I have nothing else but my child and my family, my husband, my parents, whoever are living with me. We are just a unit and we are enjoying each other's company. The problem is these days people have too many distractions, so they're not able to enjoy each other to the fullest.
Yeah. So I have a point, but any which ways, first what do you think? Do you agree with Saral when she says that we should not treat them as equals?
The way I look at it is, it's a very relative thing. So for me, when I say I will treat my child as an equal, it means the there are no double standards here. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm the parent here. It doesn't mean I will have the last word every time, whether it is right or wrong. It's about having the same rules, if I may say, for both of us. Like if I've done something wrong, really wrong, I have to own up to it and not say, oh, I'm the mother or I'm the father and I know best. Even if I make a mistake, I don't have to apologize because I know best. No, I think personally that's a wrong thing. If you have done something which is not correct, you got to own it up and say, okay, I'm sorry, I apologize. And I think that's what the child learns. So just because you are a parent, you can't get away with things because you're the superior one, so as to say. So for me, that would be an equal thing. And I'd also like to believe that over time, that equation will also change, right? If I'm in my 60s and if my child is in their 30s or 40s or whatever, that equation is definitely going to change. And that is where it will be more reflective about what I have instilled in my child, that I get to see in a different way.
Yeah,
So for me, that is the equal part of it, if you know what I mean. Matlab, wrong is wrong, right is right, but the rules has to be same for all of us. I'd give you a very small example. For Ria, from a very young age, we have let her make her own choices, what she wants to wear, what she wants to eat. Uh, there has been no inference on your mom knows the best or your dad knows the best, which I think whenever we go to India on holidays, people do find it a bit uh,
yeah,
weird, for want of a
yes.
better word. Like, oh, how can Ria decide whether she wants to have breakfast or not? How can Ria decide what she wants to wear? I'm like, that's how they are going to be responsible and figuring it out what they want or what they don't want. So, you know, what is the where it has led to is that uh, Ria is the kind of child who doesn't eat only pizza and pasta. It's a very small example, but I can take her to any home, any household, any part of the world, and she will eat whatever is served, because we never said you only have to eat this or you can't eat that. So something like that, you know, because I think it's so easy to. I mean, there are so many areas when you are parenting where you can actually put a stamp. Uh, I think there's a very delicate balance where you should try and not do that and let the child just pick up what you do on a daily basis. And I think they appreciate that the most, rather than being told what to do, what to eat, what to wear. Let them make their own choices and go along with it, I would say.
Okay. In fact, there's an interesting correlation I found between both your examples, because when Saral was speaking, when she said, I sat down with my son and explained the concept, he was 3 or 4, and you've been saying that you allow your kid the choices that she wants to make about whatever, dressing up or eating or not
Yeah,
eating. Are we saying that the value that we most cherish is the sense of giving them an independent sense of being, irrespective of us being their parents? Although, to me, the funny part was Saral said exactly the opposite of what she does, because it's about empowerment. It's not about playing the rules as a parent, or she empowered the kid. That is good enough. In my own case, with my daughter, a couple of times, I've had a late marriage, and she's 13 now. Um, it's always been one huge jump to understand her happiness about life, or but I think we kind of found a mixed way. Once, I think the compliment of my recent life is certainly when she came and said, okay, what I like is even when you and I have a fight, you never sulk for long. And for a moment, it was like my heart enlarged. I said, oh, wow, this is a compliment. Because I didn't know that I was doing it this way. She would come back and after say, matlab if I was very miffed with her, then I would tell her that tonight we are not speaking. So don't come again and apologize. This is not done. If she's misbehaved with her mother or she's done something which is like critically above a certain level. So yeah, something of
okay,
that side.
sorry, I just had a thought here. I also sometimes feel that the way we are with our children, it's it's also to some extent how we would have wanted our parents to be with us, and we get that opportunity to behave or
Yeah,
do
I would say
certain things that
I would.
we couldn't get or we couldn't ask for. Because if I may say this, for the generation that the three of us come from, uh, you can't really tell your parents, can you? Correct me if I'm wrong, right? I
No,
mean, you can't, right? I mean, okay, there would be some leeway, I'm sure, but I mean, my mom, even at this stage, would insist that I bloody eat a pumpkin curry, and I hate pumpkin to the core, you know? So those kind of things,
yeah.
right?
You've actually opened a conversation for the next 1 hour with this man.
No, it just
Yes.
crossed my mind. I just felt,
Yeah, no,
because
totally
sometimes,
understood point.
yeah, sometimes when I'm there with Ria, we do go through things, and I would always step back and reflect, how would have my mother responded in a given situation, or what would I have wanted out of her? Nothing good, nothing bad, but it's just a reflective process. And then you say, okay, this is my child. I will do, or I will conduct myself in a way which I think is going to be appropriate for all of us. And what that is again very relative, right?
Yeah, yeah, because I think
Sorry.
everyone, yeah, there's no black and white. I think it's a beautiful point. Since Saral and I have also grown up together, we were in school together, so we kind of know about each other's childhood and growing up. Um, and of course, we belong to the same generation. So my question, which you just opened up, now this conversation will where it lies, it does. But is it a good thing to be looking at it from this prism? Because uh, sometimes, uh, if your parents have been very indulgent with you, then you may land up becoming very, very strict, saying, okay, okay, everybody says that I'm a spoiled child. I've never understood. In fact, our spouses are the first to say, "Hey, this is how your mother has brought you up, or whatever." I'm not saying it. Just the implications are always that, okay, you haven't understood this basic lesson of life, and which is true. With my dad, I used to sometimes think, okay, because he was a lone child, he was very adamant about getting something. And I used to wonder, but over a period, you there's another quote which Sarlam may not like as much was very few times in your life do you forgive your parents. So, which I do not agree with fully, but I think I understand the intensity with what it has been written. Because there are times, and I know of parents who've been very strict with their kids or uh, very, very strict to the point of if it were in the West, I think they would be arrested. Um, so then you wonder uh, what is it that that guy or that person would do with their kids. So is it a good prism? My question is, if the answer is that we are trying to make up for something that we did not get as kids, I'm opening it up. Feel free to take this forward because it's a very loaded thing. Good things are fine because I was feeling you seem to be the moral models of parenting. I suddenly am not up to it. But the point is, within that also there are so many things that we. I have another question also. We can come to both the questions simultaneously at some point. Is when Saral said I would sit down with my son and confess. Uh, Times when you can't do it because it's just impossible to come to terms with it yourself. You may my dad had Alzheimer's, and there were times when I behaved much lesser than ideal. And the only thing that I did is I always told my kid the truth. But sometimes even you don't understand it. It is beyond your comprehension when you're dealing with something as big as that. But without getting into exact examples, I'm saying these two things, when you're looking at it from the prism of what is happening to you, because we are also human beings, we are not machines that we've set certain rules. And while we may say words like naturally that Sujata said and Saral has been standing up for, I would love to be in that mode, but very often it is very difficult. Very difficult. How do you reconcile your own flaws, which you are unable to take care of as a parent? How do you explain it to your kid, or you did say that kids are
um,
going to go by what we say. How do you reconcile? Is there anything that we talk with them? Is there anything that can be said? What do you tell your kid when they know that you're clearly wrong? All of us.
um, I mean, if I may say this, it's a constant work in progress, right? I mean, I tell my child, I don't have all the answers. The possibility of me getting everything wrong is highly possible, but that is how I'm going to learn. So I don't have a manual. Deal with it, right? I mean, in a nice way, of course. So I would say, I think it's a constant work in progress, and some days you get it, some days you don't. And I think reconciling is a very hard word. I would say it's like I wouldn't agree to the word reconciling. I would probably say, I mean, you just make peace with it.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
With our
my
foibles.
my
So we
point.
so we make peace with our foibles. Do you
Yes.
agree,
Oh
Sarah?
yes. Sorry. Yeah.
Um, I I did not. I have never reflected on my parenting as in reference to my childhood. If I was to, I mean, Bunty, you know, like I come from a very conservative family in certain ways, but liberal in certain ways. Um, there were a lot of restrictions, but when I look back, I remember things like, oh, I come from a joint family. Oh, I never had a sad moment. Oh, I never was lonely. And I used to share this with my sister-in-laws, and I used to do this, and we used to play this. So these are my memories of my childhood. So when I look back, there were some major unpleasant experiences um, for my parents and for me, which is a reality that is always going to remain. But um, whether we call it reconciliation or coming at peace with it, I think they both make meaning to me when I think of those major episodes which were very unpleasant between me and my parents. I went through a phase where I felt um, bitter towards my father, but I'm self-proclaimed, but I'm a very reflective person. I did not allow myself to be in that zone for more than maybe a week or two, that level of bitterness. Um, and I made peace with it, or I reconciled, however you look at it. Um, I and my son knows about it all. He knows about it all. So there's no secrets from him. And it's not that he knows about it now. He knew about it at a very young age. Even when he was 10, he knew about the differences between me and my father. So for me, I think, I've always been a mother to him, but we've always had this relationship where I would slowly and steadily give him information that his mind was ready to, um, you know, grasp and understand. So, and many times there is no other way but to make peace with things. There's no point in fighting those things. We are only going to make our life and experiences more miserable. So there some things, not some things, actually everything is how it is. You have to accept it. You have to sort of mold yourself to the best of your ability and move on. Um, like I will often say, chalti ka naam zindagi. Why resist? Why resist? If there's something you can do about it, like for example, I think, Patti, at some point you were saying that it is not always easy to confess, right? So the confession words are also based on the age of your child. Like today, I don't have to I don't have to really play with my words. I can tell it to Utkarsh as is. In fact, you won't believe there are times when I'm very upset about a work issue or something, or even a social issue for that matter. And I will sit with Utkarsh and I'll say, Utkarsh, what would you do? Like, he loves to read and he's also a very reflective person. So I go to him as my advisor, as my mentor, and I take great pride in that because he is not invested emotionally in that situation. So he will look at it very objectively and he will tell me very personal thing. Last night I was working on a project, not last night, Friday night, I was working on a project and we were up till 3 in the morning, and at 2 o'clock I was so tired. My husband's trying to tell me something, and we were sort of having the typical husband-wife arguments. And Utkarsh witnessed it all. And he's so mature. The following day, all three of us were sitting and reflecting on that project that we were working. And he tells Papa, you did X, Y, and Z, and that was not reasonable. And Mama, you did A, B, and C, and that was not reasonable. Do you know what I mean? Like he was the mediator. How cool is that?
Yeah. I think one of the
for me, it was like validation because he said something to Naishad which I was upset with him. And I said, Dekha, Utkarsh ne bhi bola.
Yeah, I think you don't need mirrors in your house because all of your reflective surfaces as it comes across. But on a serious note, a couple of things that came out from what Sujata said and you said. Um, are we saying that if we hold on to being truthful, we're not, you guys didn't use the word, but what I realized is in every different examples that you gave, when you sat with your kids, you were truthful to the extent that it was possible for them to comprehend, or else you were truthful to the fact that you were to make Saral happy about that. You are being competent as a parent, but you're laying down the rules. There is no ambiguity about the fact. So there's clarity that you're not going to get ice cream, or you're not going to get chocolate, or you're not going to get an answer to this thing. But that is what it is at this moment. Uh, what also came to me much before Saral, sorry, yeah, yeah,
Can I say
yeah,
something?
yeah,
It is very important what you said, like lay the rules. For example, I've seen parents do this. चुप करो नहीं, like social gathering में चुप करो नहीं तो घर लेके जाऊंगी, चुप करो नहीं तो घर लेके जाऊंगी. तो घर कभी जाते नहीं है. मैं बोलती हूँ एक बार दिखाओ, एक बार जाके दिखाओ तो बच्चे को भी पता चले कि you mean it.
You mean it, true, true.
So don't talk the talk, walk the talk.
Yeah. And the other part is once you start doing it, because we are talking about parenting as a subject, is when you start not only saying the truth, a very nice point that you made is living the truth. Once you start saying it, obviously at some point, uh, one is also living the truth. So maybe that is an answer to the people who have certain habits that they are trying to fight. At least to start with acknowledging and saying, okay, this is a problem that I have. I may not have an answer, which is also again borrowing from what Sujata said. Deal with it. I am your parent. I have this problem. I am not God or a goddess. I do not have all the answers, but I promise I'll try and work on it if I can, and try and be genuine. If you're not going to work on it, even mention that I'm not going to work on it. I don't have a control over it. At least the kid doesn't have any false expectations of what is coming from the parent. So when he goes out in the world, he or she goes out in the world, they will learn to take words at surface value and look at actions, because they will understand my parent has indirectly taught me that my words are this, my actions are this, but I cannot match them. But they've been honest about it. Then the other part, what I liked was because of this entire thing, and both of you being happy about the fact. Of course, my own daughter also does this to me very often. She's a good epitome of wisdom when mine absolutely fails. Is the part that you've been honest and you've been truthful and you've been wise and thought it important enough to sit with them to explain why your decision is what it is. Very often, in the heat of the moment, it is not possible. But once the event has passed, nothing has stopped us from sitting with them and acknowledging their humanity and saying, "Okay, look, this is what the matter is, this is what I can explain to you. And these are things that I cannot explain to you." I wasn't as clear as Saral was about the ratings business, but I have always told her, look, you're too young to understand this, and I don't know a better way to explain it to you. At some point, we'll sit, and when you are a little older, hopefully, both of us will sit and have this conversation. And they respect the fact that you are the same, and that is how your kid is able to. He finds what you are not seeing is the independence that we started the conversation with is with him. He can sit with his parents and tell them that this is where you're going wrong. And while you're laughing, and it's a very typical husband-wife thing that, look, this is what he's saying, and he agrees and all. But I think it's a wonderful thing that the kid goes out and he has a reasonable sense of judgment that they've come up with. Because my biggest concern as parents always, at least in India, has been you can give them money and you can give them status and you can give them education also. You can't give them character. They're going to borrow your character from what you are. And you may have a car, and if you're going to park it in the middle of the road while talking to a friend or something and do not care about other people being stuck in a traffic jam or some such thing, I think it's very poor parenting. I have rarely ever blamed kids for it. I personally think it's always the fault of ourselves. Somewhere somebody didn't tell him that this ought to be done. Life is, and one nice thing that I found, which is the biggest value of all for all of us as kids, I think we are also kids for someone somewhere. Uh, the part that life is always going to pan out the way it wants to pan out. We don't have a handle on it. And I think that's the biggest thing that Sharon mentioned. All of us, in fact, a couple of our talks, we've always landed up coming to that part which is beyond our wisdom. We just have to say, you have to accept. And acceptance is a good value to pass on. If we start to take it